Hi, hello. How are you? Okay, I was talking to myself because I've been running around. But hi, let me pin the book that I'm currently, I'm going to sample. Okay, cool. How are you? Hello. Let me... You talk to yourself too. I'm glad to know I'm not going crazy by talking to myself. But happy Wednesday. Ooh, okay, happy Wednesday. So today, I'm so excited because I went to Books Galore in London, and I got myself, I don't know with what money, don't ask me, but I got myself this for 89 Rand. Like I'm so excited. So a friend I made here on Bookamoso a few years ago suggested I read When Rain Clouds Gather first. I don't know, and it's a recent conversation, but I've forgotten the contents of it. Gosh, guys, forgive me. But yes, so when I saw this at Books Galore, because the other day I went to Books Galore after I went to Love Books for the book sale on Monday. But then I had forgotten my purse, so I couldn't buy anything at Books Galore. So I left my books there and I told them I'd be back because I found another book for our friends' present stuff. But yeah, so I found this and it was 89 Rand and I had to have it. So yeah, this is actually currently selling for 200 at Exclusive Books. I don't know who gave away this book at Books Galore, but yeah. Now I'm a happy camper because my book budget was finished a long time ago. I know, that's what I'm saying. I don't know where this money came from, but it was there. And somebody asked me earlier on when I did my story about dropping off the books for the competition that that Mulimi was running. They asked me if I've broken the bank or something, if they should call the cops or something. And I was like, no, these are not my books. Yeah, so somebody's going to be happy. They're going to get their book from the competition that we ran, Mo and I, during the lockdown. Well, we are still in lockdown, but at the beginning of the lockdown, we actually we ran a competition for him, for Roald Dahl, the book collection. So yay to that. And today I finally got my delivery of Jamil's book, Kamir, The Makings of a Vatr Slums. So I'm excited about that. I haven't even opened it. But yes, that's it. So I'm going to read the back of it, and then we will, because this was a book suggestion, and that's how I sometimes choose my books. I know these are classics and everything, but if someone says, listen, this is a must read, I will go buy it. Even if I read it years later, I will still buy it. So this, I might not even read it this year, but I bought it today for 89 Rand and it's 200. So it was just my luck. Let me read the back of it and then we will start. I don't know if any of you guys have read Maru or When Rain Clouds Gather. What were your thoughts? Hello, Webetsui. Hello, Hailey. Hi, Simile. Hey, Cabello. Hi. Southern Writers Bureau. Hi. When Rain Clouds Gather. Okay. So that's the one I'm reading. I'm going to leave Maru. I actually once had a Maru and it belonged to someone, and I returned it to the owner. So I still need Maru. I want the Maru, even though it is here. I still want that, the classic. Yeah, I'm like that. Okay, escaping South Africa and his troubled past, Makehaya crosses the border to Botswana in the hope of leading a peaceful, purposeful life. In the village of Midi, he meets Gilbert, a charismatic Englishman who is trying to help the community out of poverty by introducing modern farming methods. The two outsiders join forces, but their task is fraught with hazards: a corrupt chief, traditional beliefs, and the unrelenting climate ever threaten to bring tragedy. Corrupt chief. Yeah, already. So let me read about the author. Bessie Head, born 1937, passed away in 1986, was born in South Africa and is one of Africa's best known writers. She trained as a teacher, then worked as a journalist for Golden City Post, a drum publication, until she left for Botswana. She remained there with the precarious status of refugee for 15 years before she gained citizenship in 1979. When Rain Clouds Gather was her first published novel in 1968, followed by Maru in 1971, and her intense and powerful autobiographical work, A Question of Power, published in 1973. She wrote short stories and A Woman Alone in 1990, a collection of autobiographical writings, and Tales of Tenderness and Power in 1990. A selection of famous and previously unpublished works have been released posthumously. Okay, so 2, 4, 6, 8 titles. So the introduction on this version of the book is done by Helen Oyeyemi. I'm not going to read the introduction. I actually saw a Helen Oyeyemi book today and it was brand new. Yo guys, bookstores are they're not the devil, but yeah. Miss Weiner, hi. Hey, Kay. Samula says, yes, I've read the two books. I had the same copy you're reading. I sold it a while ago. I bought it for 200 at EB Cresta. I felt like that's my copy you were reading. Oh, I feel like that's my copy you're reading. Oh, so did you sell it at a Books Galore? Loot is messing up. Maru is in the stack of books that I've been waiting for 3 weeks. Like, finally, this thing came today. Like, loot is a problem, guys, and we love loot so much because it's cheaper. But and the different packaging, like a book arrives on Monday and then another one 2 days later. Like, anyway, let me read the book and then maybe this is your book. So you read the books and you sell them like this. But thank you if it's yours. Chapter 1 of When Rain Clouds Gather. Also, guys, for those who are still here and who might leave while I'm reading, there's going to be a live discussion tonight at 7 on Facebook that I'm part of as Bookamoso and as a parent, because I'm part of that network, Ask a Parent. The website just launched today, so please come and see what Ask a Parent is all about. But yes, 7 p.m. on Facebook Live. Ask a Parent is the page that you should follow. And then you must please go subscribe on YouTube at Bookamoso and then Ask a Parent. Yay! Cool. Okay, chapter 1. Let me stop my excitement. The little Barolong village swept right up to the border fence. One of the huts was built so close that a part of its circular wall touched the barbed wire fencing. In this hut, a man had been sitting since the early hours of dawn. He was waiting until dark when he would try to spring across the half-mile gap of no man's land to the Botswana border fence and then onto whatever illusion of freedom lay ahead. It was June and winter and bitterly cold, and his legs were too long to allow for pacing in the cramped space of the hut. Every half hour, the patrol van of the South African Border Police sped past with sirens wailing, and this caused an unpleasant sensation in his stomach. I'll soon have a stomach ache if I go on like this, he thought. His nerves weren't so good, too easily jangled by the irritations of living. In fact, the inner part of him was a jumble of chaotic discord, very much bellied by his outer air of calm, lonely self-containment. The only way you could sense this inner discord was through a trick he had of slightly averting his face, as though no man was his brother or worthy of his trust. Otherwise, his face was rather pleasing to the eye. It was often wryly amused. Its general expression was one of absorbed, attentive listening. His long, thin, falling away cheekbones marked him as a member of either the Xhosa or Zulu tribe. Towards noon, when there was a lull in the wailing sirens, the old man who owned the hut pushed open the door, letting in a shaft of sunlight. He held in his hands a steaming bowl of thick porridge. The man by now had a dreadful stomach ache, and the sight of the food did not immediately please him. "Well, how are you, son?" the old man asked. "I'm all right," the man lied. It did not seem quite dignified to admit that he had stomach trouble. "I've brought you a little food," the old man said. "Thank you," the man said. "But could I go out for a while and stretch my legs?" he asked to ease the painful knots in his stomach. "It's not safe," the old man said. "I can't guarantee who may or may not be a spy. Once you are caught here, it will make it unsafe for those who come on behind. I would no doubt go to jail too." The young man was bent over the hand-carved stool on which he sat, and the old man thought he might be cold. "Why not take a little brandy?" he asked sympathetically. "I know a place nearby, and I can send for some if you want it." The man looked up, relieved, and nodded his head. He took out a pound note and handed it to the old man. The old man smiled widely. He had not known of one fugitive, yet who did not need it. Besides, with a little brandy inside, they soon became talkative, and he liked all the stories. He stored them up against the day when he would be free to surprise his village with his vast fund of information on fugitives. He closed the door and shuffled away. A dog barked nearby. There was a chatter of women's voices and music and singing. There was, a child began to cry loudly. Men laughed, and the man in the hut was briefly surprised that a whole village could live in a wail of those sirens that had tied his stomach in such tight knots. Soon the old man shuffled back again. Because relief was near at hand, he noticed how the dust of the mud floor rose up and shimmered and danced in the sunlight as the old man pushed open the door. The old man had not only the brandy but a bowl of food for himself as well. It pleased the young man in the shadows that he did not close the door, because as soon as he had taken a few careful sips from the bottle, he could clearly discern the gentle interweaving dance pattern of the sunlit dust. The slow, almost breathless rhythm eased away the knots of stomach trouble, and he unconsciously smiled to himself in this sudden warm glow of expansive relief that was now his abdomen. Noting this, the old man said, "I say, son, what's your name?" Makaya, the young man replied. The old man screwed up his eyes, perplexed. The sound and meaning of the name were unfamiliar to him. Tswana-speaking tribes dominated the northern Transvaal. I don't know it, the old man said, shaking his head. It's Zulu, the young man said. I'm a Zulu. And he laughed sarcastically at the thought of calling himself a Zulu. But you speak Tswana fluently, the old man persisted. Quite drunk by now, the young man said rather crazily, Yes, we Zulus are like that. Since the days of Shaka, we've assumed that the whole world belongs to us. That's why we trouble to learn any man's language. But look here, old man, I'm no tribalist. My parents are. That's why they saddled me with this foolish name. Why not call me Samuel or Johnson? Because I'm not tribalist. Jo, said the old man, using a Tswana expression of surprise. And what's wrong with the tribe? I have a list of grievances against it. I haven't got time to go into them now. He paused, trying to collect his thoughts in the haze of brandy that was clouding his brain. Makaya, he said, that tribal name is the wrong one for me. It is for one who stays home, yet they gave it to me and I have not known a day's peace and contentment in my life. It's because of education, the old man said, nodding his head wisely. They should not have given you the education. Take away the little bit of education and you will be only too happy to say, Mama, please find me a tribal girl and let us plow. It's only the education that turns a man away from his tribe. The conversation threatened to become a vast, meaningless, rambling digression. Good storyteller that he was, the old man brought it back to the main points at hand. Why was the young man here? What was he fleeing from? A jail sentence, perhaps? The young man looked at him suspiciously. I'm just out of jail, he said. He closed the brandy bottle and picked up the bowl of porridge. And then some anxiety seemed to jolt him, for he put the bowl down again, searched the inside pocket of his coat, and took out a little scrap of paper. He struck a match and burnt the paper. Then he picked up the bowl of porridge and would not utter another word. The old man was left to put two and two together. Perhaps scraps of paper and jail sentences were the same thing in the young man's mind. Someone just fell. Oh, guys. Why did he jump so at the thought of one tiny scrap? And what was this about tribalism? What about the white man who was the only recognized enemy of everyone? Oh, so you have no complaints about the white man? The old man said, struggling to pry some information out of the tightly shut mouth. The young man only turned his face slightly, yet the light of laughter danced in his eyes. Ha! I see now, the old man said, pretending disappointment. You are running away from tribalism. But just ahead of you is the worst tribal country in the world. We Barolong are neighbors of the Botswana, but we cannot get along with them. They are a thick-headed lot who think no further than this door. Tribalism is meat and drink to them. The young man burst out laughing. Oh, Baba, he said, I just want to step on free ground. I don't care about people. I don't care about anything, not even the white man. I want to feel what it is like to live in a free country, and then maybe some of the evils in my life will correct themselves. The wail of the approaching sirens sounded again. After they had swept past, the old man left the hut, closing the door behind him. Makaya was left alone with his thoughts, and since these threatened to trouble him, he kept on numbing them with a little brandy sipped straight from the bottle. The sun set early in winter, and by 7 o'clock it was pitch dark. Makaya made ready to cross the patch of no man's land. The 2 border fences were 7-foot-high barriers of close, tautly drawn barbed wire. He waited in the hut until he heard the patrol van pass. Then he removed his heavy overcoat and stuffed it into a large leather bag. He stepped out of the hut and pitched the leather bag over the fence, grasped hold of the barbed wire, and heaved himself up and over. Picking up his bag, he ran as fast as he could across the patch of ground to the other fence, where he repeated the performance. Then he was in Botswana. Hello, hi everybody. In his anxiety to get as far away from the border as fast as possible, he hardly felt the intense, penetrating cold of the frosty night. For almost half an hour he sped, blind and deaf and numbed to anything but this major fear. The wail of the siren brought him to an abrupt halt. It sounded shockingly near, and he feared that his crashing pace would draw attention to himself. But the lights of the patrol van swept past, and he knew from timing the patrols throughout the long tortuous day that he had another half hour of safety ahead of him. As he relaxed a little, his mind grasped the fact that he had been sucking in huge gulps of frozen air and that his lungs were flaming with pain. He removed the heavy coat from the bag and put it on. He also took a few careful sips from the brandy bottle and then continued on his way at a more leisurely pace. He had not walked more than a few paces when he again came to an abrupt halt. The air was full of the sound of bells, thousands and thousands of bells, tinkling and tinkling with a purposeful, monotonous rhythm. Yet there was not a living thing in sight to explain where the sound was coming from. He was quite sure that around him and in front of him were trees and more trees, thorn trees that each time he approached too near ripped at his clothes. But how to explain the bells, unearthly sounding bells in an apparently unlived in wasteland? Oh God, I'm going crazy, he thought. He looked up at the stars. They winked back at him silently, blandly. He could even make out some of the star patterns of the southern constellations. Surely, if his mind was suddenly disordered through the tensions of the day, the stars would appear disordered too. Surely everything became mixed up to a person who had just lost his mind. He shook his head, but the bells continued their monotonous rhythmic tinkling. He knew some pretty horrifying stories about tribal societies and the witch doctors who performed their ghoulish rites by night. But witch doctors were human, and nothing, however odd and perverse, need be feared if it was human. Taking this as a possible explanation of the bells restored his balance, and he continued on his way, keeping an alert eye open for the fires or huts of the witch doctors. Soon he saw a fire in the bush, a small bit of self-contained light in the overwhelming darkness. He headed straight for it, and as he approached, the flickering, crackling light outlined the shape of 2 mud huts and the forms of a woman and a child. It was the woman who looked up as she became aware of approaching footsteps. He stood still, not wishing to alarm her. She appeared to be very old. Her small eyes were completely sunk in the wrinkles of her face. The child was a girl of about 10 who kept her head bent, idly drawing a pattern with a stick on the ground. He greeted the old woman in Tswana, politely calling her mother in a quiet, reassuring voice. She did not return the greeting. Instead, she demanded, "Yes, what do you want?" She had a loud, shrill, uncontrolled voice, and he disliked her immediately. "I was looking for shelter for the night," he said. She kept quiet, yet stared fixedly at the direction from which his voice came. Then she burst out in that loud, jarring voice. "I say, are you one of the spies from over the border?" Since he did not respond, she became quite excited, raising her voice even louder. "Why else do people wander about at night unless they are spies? All the spies in the world are coming into our country. I tell you, you are a spy. You are a spy." It was the shouting that unnerved him. The border was still very near, and at any moment now the patrol van would pass. "How can you embarrass me like this?" he said in a quiet, desperate voice. "Are women of your country taught to shout at men?" "I'm not shouting," she shrilled, but in a slightly lower voice. His words and consistently quiet speech were beginning to impress her. "Well, my ears must be deceiving me, mother," he said, amused. "Tell me where you can offer me shelter or not. Or tell me whether you can offer me shelter or not. I'm no spy. I've just lost my way in the darkness." The fixed stare never wavered. She said curtly, "I have a spare hut. You may use it, but only for tonight. You must also pay. I want 10 shillings. She held out a shriveled old hand, cold and hard with years and years of labor. He stepped towards the fire and handed her a 10-shilling note. She reached behind her for a small carved stool and said, "Sit here. The child will sweep the hut and put down some blankets." The child stood up obediently and disappeared into one of the huts. He sat down opposite the crude, rude phenomenon who continued staring at him. The wail of the patrol siren again sounded quite near, almost behind his back. He held her glance calmly. "I know you are a spy," she said. "You are running away from them." He smiled. "Perhaps you just want to annoy me, but as you can see, I'm not easily annoyed." "Where do you come from?" she asked. "From over the border," he said. "I have an appointment to start work in this country tomorrow." "Why didn't you come by train?" she asked suspiciously. "But my home is so near, in the Baralong village," he lied. She turned her head and spat on the ground as an eloquent summing up of what she thought of him. Then she sat with her head averted, as though she had abruptly dismissed him from her thoughts. The bells were still tinkling away. "What are all those bells for?" he asked. "They are tied around the necks of the cattle because they are grazing freely in the bush," she said. He felt ashamed at the thought of how they had terrified him, and they were only cowbells. He also wanted to laugh out loud, and to suppress this, he said conversationally, "I'm not an owner of cattle. I suppose the bells are there to locate them if they get lost." "Of course," she said scornfully. "Cattle wander a great distance while grazing." Meanwhile, the child had crept quietly back to the fireside. Half consciously, his gaze wandered in her direction, and he was startled to find the child looking at him with a full, bold stare. There was something very unchildlike about it, and it displeased him. His glance flickered back to the old woman. She was staring again, and he even imagined that he saw a gleam in the sunken old eyes. "My God," he thought, "what a pair of vultures they are." Aloud, he said, "Is the room ready now, mother?" She merely turned and pointed to one of the huts. He stood up immediately, relieved to be rid of their unpleasant company. He struck a match as he entered the dark hut. It seemed to be a storage shed. A large grain basket stood in one corner, and there were a number of earthenware pots encircling the room. A space had been cleared on the floor, on which were placed wide square covers made of animal skins. He struck another match to take a better look at what he was to sleep on. The feel of it was like thick, soft velvet, squares upon squares of the sewn-together skins of hundreds of wild animals. He only removed his shoes and overcoat. The overcoat he flung over the top cover for extra warmth. The bed seemed well worth 10 shillings to him because it was very warm. He lay on his back, staring up at the dark, too tense to sleep. A good gulp of brandy would have knocked him out cold, but he dared not touch it. He distrusted the suspicious old hag. She seemed to know too much about the border. What would prevent her from stepping down there and informing the police? There was good money in it, if she knew about that too. A cold sweat broke out on him as he imagined her at the fence, shouting at the patrol van. And what about the child and her awful, unchildlike stare? He listened alertly to their every movement. For a time, there was a low murmured conversation, and then he heard the fire being scrapped out. Then the door of the next hut was pushed open. The old hag coughed a bit. There was more murmured conversation and a brief silence. Then the door was opened again, and he could tell that it was the child who had gone out because the old hag was coughing inside. He lay quite still as the door of his hut was carefully and quietly pushed open by the child, and equally quietly and carefully closed behind her. She dropped lightly down on her knees and moved her hands over the covers until they reached his face. "What do you want?" he asked. The hands darted back, and there was a brief silence. Then she said, "You know." "I don't," he said. She kept quiet, as though puzzling this out. At last, she said, "My grandmother won't mind as long as you pay me." "Go away," he said, abashed, humiliated. "You're just a child." But she just sat there and would not move. He really could not stand it. He raised himself and struck a match and took out a 10-shilling note and handed it to her. "Here's the money," he said fiercely. "Now go away." Her eyes were wide and uncomprehending in the brief flare of the match, but she grasped the note and fled. From the hut next door, he heard the brief, plaintive explanation of the child and the loud, surprised chatter of the old woman. "You mean he gave you the money for nothing?" she said, beside herself with excitement. "This is a miracle. I have not yet known a man who did not regard a woman as a gift from God. He must be mad." Sure. Hey guys, poverty. This child is 10. I knew it all along in my heart that he was mad. Let us lock the door to protect ourselves from the madman. What a loathsome woman, he thought, and yet how naive she was in her evil. He had known many such evils in his lifetime. He thought they were created by poverty and oppression, and he had spent the last 2 years in jail in the belief that, in some way, a protest would help set the world right. It was the mentality of the old hag that ruined a whole continent, some sort of clinging, ancestral, tribal belief that a man was nothing more than a groveling sex organ, that there was no such thing as privacy of soul and body, and that no ordinary man would hesitate to jump on a mere child. He had sisters at home, one almost the same age as the child, and some a few years older. But he was the eldest in the family, and according to custom, he had to be addressed as Booty, which means elder brother, and treated with exaggerated respect. As soon as his father died, he made many changes in the home, foremost of which was that his sisters would address him by his first name and associate with him as equals and friends. This is a good guy. When his mother had protested, he had merely said, Why should men be brought up with a false sense of superiority over women? People can respect me if they wish, but only if I earn it. For all his strange new ideas, the family had not wanted to part with him. In fact, he had left his mother in a state of complete collapse, and though at the time he had pretended to be unmoved by all the tears and sighs, it was all this that had made him drink brandy throughout the afternoon. His reasons for leaving were simple. He could not marry and have children in a country where black men were called boy and dog and kafir. The continent of Africa was vast without end, and he simply felt like moving out of a part of it that was mentally and spiritually dead through the constant perpetuation of false beliefs. Sure. Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm just realizing how shocking the story is. We had to read it in high school, grade 11, if I'm not mistaken. What did I read? Master Harold and the Boys, I think, and Lord of the Rings. No, is it Lord of the Flies? Lord of the Flies and Shakespeare, yeah. Sure. When Rain Clouds Gather. So this is a 2-in-1 version, but I want Maru by itself because it's a classic by itself. I'm like that. I like different covers of. If I could buy all the books in the world, guys, I would buy all the covers. But hi. So yeah, that was When Rain Clouds Gather by Bessie Head. And sure, I'm already just worried about the things that this girl has gone through as a 10-year-old girl living with this old grandmother who's just, oh gosh, her ways and thoughts are just something else. So yeah, guys, for those who just joined and you read Maru. I gave Akebala Maru, and even when I had that copy that belonged to someone, I kept it for so long, and I actually while I was living in Bloemfontein, so it belonged to an author, and I had found it through so I ended up meeting her this side once I had moved here a few years ago, and I met her and I bought a book of hers, and then I gave her the book, and she was like, oh, where did you find it? And I was like, it's a long story, but yeah, so I need that one copy. I went to school pre-1994, so there wasn't any African literature. That's sad. See, sure. That's sad. You see why I collect books for these kids, so that, guys, it's very important that we ensure that our kids read. Hey, but yeah, that was today's reading. It seems beautiful already. And I'm gonna actually contact Mido of Mido_reads. Mido reads. Mido and I were talking about this, and she had just finished reading both as well. So Queen says she read Maru, and and she also said it's hectic. It sounds hectic, right? This is very shocking at the time of Lit Space. You read this in grade 11. Can you imagine? Hi, Reading Nomad. Hi, Catphobia. Hey, everybody. Thank you guys for joining me. I just finished reading this for those who came in late. I'm going to save this on the IG Live, IGTV, and then I will actually, guys, all the previous videos from the past week or so are actually saved on IGTV now. I'm still trying to understand how I can download them and share them onto YouTube, because I've created a YouTube channel. It's the same name, Bookamoso Book Club, and I should be starting with sharing things by Friday. But please go subscribe. I'll see you guys at 7 o'clock on Facebook, on Ask a Parent. That's where I'll be tonight. So all the parents, please tell the other parents. There's a new platform that's just launched. askaparent.co.za is now live, and yeah, I'll be contributing some stuff, and yeah, it's exciting times. So please join us tonight. But yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Yay! Yes, Queen. I've just loaded. I need to actually load something on it. I'm just scared half the time, but I will do it. I promise. I did say this yesterday, and yeah, I had a hectic day. But yeah, tonight on Facebook, 7 o'clock Central African time. Is that what everybody says? And then we'll be discussing the platform and what it's gonna bring. Think edutainment. Think fitness after birth. There's also a psychologist on there. So there's a midwife as well, and I'm so excited to be part of the network of Ask a Parent. So please ask a parent at 7 p.m. Thank you guys for joining me. Hi, Young, Gifted, and Black. Mwah, mwah, mwah. I just finished reading now. But it will be on IGTV. I read When Rain Clouds Gather by Bessie Head. So this is actually just like sampling of all the books that I have. Some of them that I've been reading are actually books that I've read. But yeah, every day I read at 5 until 5:30 or just before 6. But yes, so I've been reading since the lockdown started like 70 days ago or something. But yeah, every day 5 p.m. See you guys tomorrow, and thank you so much for joining me. Please subscribe, YouTube, Ask a Parent, and Bookamoso Book Club. Thank you guys. See you tomorrow at 5. Bye.